Back on the Young Turks. We've got a great guest for you now, Bob Borosage. He's the co-director of Campaign for America's Future. Bob, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Good evening.
I want to talk to you about Evan Bayh a little bit. The mainstream media tell me that he's a good and thoughtful person, that he's a moderate and bipartisan and a centrist and a real hero in Washington. Are you going to tell me here that that might not be the case? Are you going to be that rude, Bob?
Well, I think it's the point I was trying to make today as I wrote about Mr. Bayh's departure is he was complaining about how nothing could be done in a bipartisan fashion in Washington. And in fact, while he was in the Senate, much was done in a bipartisan fashion in the Congress. They passed top-end tax cuts. They passed corporate trade accords that the Chinese took advantage of. They passed the support for the war in Iraq. And Mr. Bayh, of course, was a champion of all of those things, and all of them contributed to us going off the cliff. So it's important for people not to accept this myth that nothing got done over the last decade in Washington. The fact is that a lot of things got done, and they were catastrophic.
Now, I think, like you do, Bob, that there is real bipartisanship in Congress. But it's not just all the disastrous things that were done under the Bush administration. I've noticed a pattern, which is that if corporate lobbyists want something done, well, that'll pass. That'll be bipartisan. And all the Republicans will vote for it, and I would say at least 20 Democrats will vote for it. And in fact, they have a supermajority that is bipartisan of corporatist politicians. And am I on to something here that if something is related to corporate America, that winds up passing, and if it's against corporate America, that it doesn't pass?
Well, I think that's you've got a good case there. Certainly, what we've seen under the Obama administration, I think, is a case study of the power of corporate lobbies. And their ability, certainly, to stop things like healthcare reform or energy reform or financial reform. And what we saw under the Bush administration was their ability to get things passed, like top-end tax cuts and financial deregulation and the like.
It's funny how whenever there is a major industry gain to be had, those bills wind up passing. But when industry might get reformed, those bills don't pass. That's a weird coincidence. So,
well, money talks big time.
Yeah,
we're about to have one of these classic case studies, though, which is out of the House, they passed direct lending for college students. Direct lending would save $90 billion a year that now goes to big banks and subsidies that are totally wasted because the loans have to be guaranteed by the government anyway. And so $90 billion can go to increased Pell Grants for poor kids and tax breaks for parents working parents trying to get their kids through college. Passed the House. It's now before the Senate, and the banking lobby has gone big time to save their $90 billion in subsidies. Evan Bayh, 2 days after he said he was leaving the Congress, just weighed in on the side, it won't surprise you, of the banks.
Oh, really? Evan Bayh's in favor of the banks? I didn't see that coming. What a moderate and thoughtful person he is.
Against students and against working families. And I tell you, there is no program that has less sense to it than subsidizing the banks to provide loans for students that the government guarantees. And if the Senate can't get this passed, then your case is truly made that the corporate lobbies govern everything.
Bob, I have not seen what the vote breakdown on that is, so I don't have any knowledge of which way it's going to go at all, right? I will predict right now that it does not pass. Okay.
Well, we have a good shot because it's in reconciliation. It only needs 51 votes.
Yeah, I know. So does the public option. How's that working out?
Exactly.
Okay, so now I want to delve into that issue just a little bit more, though, because, I was debating a conservative on air about that very issue, and he said, no, you don't understand, Cenk. These middlemen that give the loans to the students, they make the system more efficient, and we have to do it through the private market, etc. If the government does it, they'll bungle it. Now, talk to me about the merit or lack of merit of that argument. Is it totally baseless, or does he have a point, but it's just not worth it in the long run?
It's totally baseless. That is, what the banks did, if you remember, is they essentially bribed student loan offices so they could get monopoly position in different colleges, in which case they could then charge students higher interest rates and gouge them. They are also notorious for being brutal to students that miss a payment, raising interest rates, etc. If a graduate loses their job and can't continue paying on their loans, they've now changed the bankruptcy law so that even if you go bankrupt, they can pursue you beyond your death to collect these loans. So this is a brutal and horrible process. And then, of course, they securitized all of them. So when the financial collapse took place, they abandoned the field, and the government had to step in to save the program from collapsing completely. So there is literally no basis for wanting private banks to control this program.
But if the government does the loans itself, is it going to run into the issues of how's it going to collect from people? Might it not collect as well as a private bank, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think there is that question, but I mean, the current plan is that they will contract out with these same banks to do the collection, but they'll still save $90 billion in the subsidies to banks for offering the loans.
Because in the end, no matter what, the government is the one giving the loans. Is that roughly right?
Well, the government's guaranteeing the loan. So
right.
If the loan gets defaulted on, the government pays the banks, and then the banks can still go back and try to collect from the kid.
Well, then there's no. Again, you're totally right. There's no
sense
in it.
Heads they win, tails you lose.
That's, I mean, as usual, right? So you're right. That's very indicative of whether, again, the banks in corporate America is going to win or not. So I want to talk about one other thing regarding Evan Bayh. It's not just that he voted with the Republicans on so many issues. It's not just that he voted with the lobbyists on so many issues. Whether it was for Republican proposals or against Democratic proposals. But it's also how he frames things. And I thought you made a really interesting point about that in regards to the stimulus plan. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you mean that Bayh spent his time both making the stimulus weaker and making it smaller against his own president. And now is arguing that the stimulus, now that he retires, he said the stimulus didn't create one job, and that he'll create more jobs if he goes in the private sector than the Senate has or the Congress has over the last year. Well, that's simply nonsense. There isn't an economist who's a legitimate economist who won't tell you that the stimulus has created about 2 million jobs and has saved us from a much worse downturn, if not a depression.
So because that's so damaging, because then the Republicans and the media turn around and go, well, even the thoughtful, moderate, centrist Evan Bayh says that the stimulus has created no jobs. So forget what the economists say and forget what the facts are. Well, if Evan Bayh says it and he's such a good Democrat, then obviously we have a bipartisan agreement that the stimulus package sucked.
Yeah, no, I think the important point for people to take out of this is we have had a wrong-headed establishment consensus that in fact got things done. And the very things they got done, banking deregulation, corporate trade, the war in Iraq, had bipartisan support from the center and were catastrophic for the country. And we have to understand this isn't about the frustration of partisanship in which nothing gets done. We are suffering the reality of bad policy and bad ideas that did get done with bipartisan support.
Because the political center of Washington isn't the political center of the country. It's the center of the powerful in Washington, and that's K Street, et cetera. And we talked about that. Now, finally, Bob, and we're talking to Bob Borosage, co-director of Campaign for America's Future. Well, we have to ask what are we going to do about it. And to me, what it appears must be done is for real progressives to wage a battle against corporatist Democrats. Because the Republicans, we know, we got it, okay? They're corporatists. But the people that are agreeing with them and causing all of this damage are those at least a third of the Democratic Party that Evan Bayh was squarely in the middle?
I think there's no question. There's two tasks there, though. First, we had to continue to try to defeat conservative Republicans who are now trying to pass themselves off as fake populists. The Republicans now are offering themselves to the banks as their protectors against any reform, while pretending to be against the banking bailout and to be populists about the banking bonuses. And this hypocrisy has to be challenged, and they have to be defeated for really wrong-headed policies. And then second, we have to go after the conservative Democrats that vote with them and that give them operating majorities or the ability to block any real reforms from taking place. Yeah, there's no question you have to do both. It's not a partisan question. It's about getting rid of the bad ideas that have governed us over the last 2 decades and moving to a different era of progressive reform.
Well, we can't be squeamish about that. And in the immortal words of John McCain, we've got to name their names. We've got to make them famous. Otherwise, people aren't going to know. But we're out of time today. And Bob, thank you so much for coming on. Your article was great, and we appreciated talking to you.
Good talking to you. Take care.
All right. Young Turks?